back to Tim.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sophie. So with Messing About on the Water, please welcome Matt.
Thank you very much, Tim. Sailing. Wave at me if you've ever done it. Well, we've got a few takers there. When some of us hear the word sailing, we think of people like Long John Silver, Jack Sparrow, as he has appeared in the form of Jagged Matt, and maybe even good old Captain Pugwash. Others of us think about Ratty from Wind in the Willows. I'm here to say, my name is Matt and I'm a sailorholic. And my version of sailing, dinghy racing, is somewhere between piratical swashbuckling and bucolic idling. Maybe at the end of this hopefully laconic speech, you'll be tempted to give it a go. When I say I sail dinghies, I'm not talking about rubber dinghies, but little plastic boats, which you can hopefully see behind me, called lasers. They're about 15 feet long, just under the length of 3 bathtubs stacked end to end, which is a peculiar image, I realise. And they look a bit like big surfboards with a sail. You can get one for a few £100, or you could borrow one from your local sailing club. Out at Farmore Reservoir, a few miles west of Oxford, we normally get about 10 to 15 for Sunday racing, alongside maybe 30 other boats, some bigger, some with more sails, some certainly fancier. Scattered around the reservoir, there are 11 buoys, spelt B-U-O-Y-S, in case you were worrying about stranded infants, and we sail around them. Sometimes we do triangles, some squares, and sometimes it's some sort of complicated knitting pattern. Here are my top 4 reasons to get out on the water. Number 1, nature. Sailing is a brilliant way, not just to get outside, but also to get outside in some rather lovely places. If you go to Farmore Reservoir, you'll find yourself surrounded by this ring of grassy hills. You'll see huge flocks of birds. You might even see fish. Being outside for us is good, but it's even better to be by the water. In 2013, there was a study by 2 people called George McHerron and Susan Morato, who found a particularly close link between well-being and proximity to the water. In other words, if you go regularly to lakes and to the sea, you'll be happier. And it's hard to be more proximate to the water than bobbing around on top of it. Number 2, fitness. Sailing might be a sitting down sport, but you'd struggle to find a better workout. When you're leaning over, trying to keep the boat flat, which is inexplicably called hiking, you're doing one big, long, apparently never-ending abdominal crunch. When you pull the sails in, you're working your arms and your back. And you've got to be quick around the boat when you're tacking across the wind if you don't want to go swimming. When it all comes together in a heavy wind, sailing is exhausting. If you're the kind of person who likes to exercise so hard that 2 days later you can't walk, sailing might be the sport for you. If all of that sounds a little bit intimidating, here's my number 3, accessibility. Yes, sailing can be pretty full on, but it doesn't have to be. When there's no wind at all, sailing is completely unlike the Herculean effort of a force 6. It's not just about light winds against heavy winds. Some types of boat test you in different ways from others. My parents sail a type of boat, the GP14, which is admittedly a bit of a tub, but which can be sailed by anybody. For some people who might not enjoy the idea of the mad panic of being ever so close to capsize all the time, there are keel boats. These things, with their big heavy keels in the centre, will not capsize unless you're going out in a hurricane, in which case, points to you. There are even particular kinds of keel boats designed for people with limited mobility. And in those, instead of moving around the boat, you sit in a fixed position in the middle, underneath the sail, and you don't have to move at all. Basically, there is a boat for everybody. It's now time for my number 4, interest. To do well in a race on the water, you've got to keep a lot of plates spinning. I think you can see my plate here. My first plate is being able to sail, and to sail well. My second is to adapt to the weather. You've got to see the winds, spot where it's coming from, and guess when it's going to go. And you've also got to adapt to your fellow competitors. It's pretty tactical. If you let someone get between you and the wind, they can slow you down. If you're very unlucky, they can hit you as well, which you don't probably want to happen. There are all sorts of rules which tell you who has rights of way in that situation. You've got to know them, but the key thing is those rules create opportunities for the cunning. There are dark arts at play if you know how to conjure with them. In short, there's a lot going on. If you like to imagine playing chess while jogging down Oxford High Street, you'd start to get an image of what it's like. I wouldn't claim to be an expert sailor. When I have found myself at the front of the fleet, it's more often been a result of sheer dumb luck than skill. Most of my races end somewhere between mediocrity and calamity. And yet, I keep coming back. If you'd like to know just what it is that keeps me hooked, why not give sailing a go? Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you very much, Matt. I do like